Well, businesses, politicians, and stocks are all reacting to Monday's endangerment finding by EPA. The agency concluded greenhouse gases are a danger to the public health and must be regulated. The decision gives a boost to the Obama administration's case in Copenhagen, showing the U.S. is taking action to combat global warming despite inaction in Congress on climate legislation. U.S. politicians applauded the decision. Senator Barbara Boxer said the president's appearance in Denmark will carry more weight now, showing that America is taking the issue very seriously. National Corn Growers Association is expressing concern today about the impacts on farmers, and the livestock industry is also worried with production facilities that will fall under regulation. The European Commission applauded the decision today, saying it should give further impetus to negotiations underway in Denmark. Some are calling for more on the part of the U.S. Sweden's Environment Minister came out and said the ruling shows the U.S. can do more than it's put on the table. Some energy stocks got a boost from the news. Solar stocks got lifted, utilities gained, and some companies that have made big moves toward energy efficiency. Exelon was a gainer, as was Duke Energy. Oil and gas stocks were mixed. That finding wasn't all positive for that sector. ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips lost ground. Joining us with more on the endangerment finding, Stephen Johnson. He's former administrator for the EPA under the Bush administration. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Thank you.
So nice to have you on. So how big a deal is this endangerment finding for the president as he heads to Copenhagen?
It is a big deal. It's an important step. It's the first step that's required under the law before EPA can begin regulating. Having said that, there's greater expectations at the UN Conference of the Parties. There's an expectation that the United States will commit a much more aggressive target than what is being discussed right now.
Does this do it, though? I mean, does this take the pressure off that 17% number, which some call laughable?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there is
great. Need to do more.
There's great expectation that needs to be done more, and second is there's also an expectation by developing countries that the United States will provide financial as well as technical support, which hasn't been talked about much so far.
Can a number for reducing emissions be hooked on to this to these possible coming EPA regulations to be able to say that boosts that 17% up to this range?
The problem is it can't, because yesterday's action just sets the stage for regulating. Okay. And so the first regulation that will come out will deal with cars and light trucks, which Congress had already passed legislation requiring the CAFE standard be raised in the United States. So in many ways, everybody's known about this for the last two plus years. And so it is a meaningful step, but cars and light trucks, new cars and light trucks, only account for a very small percentage of the total transportation industry, from airplanes to boats to ships to buses to trucks. All of those will require regulation under the decision yesterday. In addition, given the decision on cars and light trucks and endangerment, the way the Clean Air Act works is that it also triggers all aspects of the Clean Air Act, and that means every sector of our economy, whether you are mobile or whether you are stationary. So the big sources like coal-fired power plants and factories will be included, but the way the law works is that it doesn't distinguish between a large factory and a home or a school. And so one of the concerns about the endangerment finding yesterday and the existing Clean Air Act is that it's all-encompassing.
So what about that tailoring rule that might leave the EPA out of the smaller sources? Will that hold up?
Well, I think certainly that's the reasoned and rational approach that the agency is taking. The problem is that when you look back at the Clean Air Act in 1990, we had the same discussions back then, that we were going to focus on the major emitters. And yet today, the law, has been used to regulate chainsaws, lawnmowers, fireplaces, and your summer barbecue. Not quite, but nonetheless. So the intentions are good, but the way the law is structured is that it's very hard to wall off or to have a limit on what you do or don't do. And keep in mind that focusing on coal-fired power plants and transportation only account for 52% of the greenhouse gas emissions. That means 48, almost 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions are still being emitted, whether it's from agriculture, whether it's from our homes or schools, beyond transportation. And so it's going to be hard for the United States to, on one hand, say there is a public health endangerment finding and we're not going to address 48% of the emissions.
Now, Jackson has said that she prefers this progress be made under legislation. Does this light a fire under Congress to pass something?
Absolutely. I think that as more people begin to understand what the existing Clean Air Act does, and its all-encompassing power, if you will, it will force, I think, Congress and others to begin to embrace legislation. Personally, I believe that legislation is a much more preferable approach. A market-based approach has been most effective in controlling air pollutants in the past. I think that's the way for the future as well.
What impact do you see from those people coming out with concerns, manufacturing industries, Chamber of Commerce, the corn growers, the livestock people?
Well, there are real concerns because the way the current Clean Air Act is written, it's a very blunt instrument. It cannot take into consideration, for example, international issues. So what about businesses that move from the United States to another country, whether it's China, India, or someplace else, that may say they're going to be regulating, but in fact don't deliver? And so there's no way in the existing law to penalize or to account for inaction by other countries. And obviously this is a global issue that requires global response.
Right. How do you like Lisa Jackson's comment, more has been done on climate change in the last 11 months in the U.S. than has been done in the last 8 years?
Well, you know, we all have our opinions, and I'm very proud of the fact that issued the advance notice of proposed rulemaking, which lays all this out, which was really the foundation for this decision. Also proposed that we would, in fact, raise the CAFE standard, which they're going to finalize next year. So I think as I look at environmental protection, it's a relay race.
Right.
And that as administrator, I ran the race hard, I passed the baton to Lisa, now she's doing the same, and I wish her the best.
Okay. Former EPA Administrator Stephen Johnson, thank you so much for coming in, offering your insight. We appreciate it.